My dear siblings in Christ at St. Peter's, I trust that by now most of you have received the message that we will be closed for services this Sunday. And while it's hard to know exactly when we'll be able to reopen, my sense is it won't be until the end of March. We will be taking this on a week-by-week basis. I realize this is a really difficult time for many of us. We are anxious. We're worried for ourselves. We're worried for those we love, just sort of worried about the world in general. And I know especially in times when we can't connect with each other in ways we normally do, in times we can't do those things that we normally do, like go to a movie, go out for dinner, that increases our anxiety. And I wanted to say a couple things about that. First, I want you to know that we are live streaming our worship on Sunday morning. We will also, for the duration of the suspension of services, be live streaming Compline at 7 p.m. That will be spoken Compline, not sung. Sarah and I will alternate doing that. There will be other services from time to time that we will post as well, or we will live stream, so stay tuned for that. On Monday, a small group of us will be meeting at a safe social distance to work out other ways that we can stay connected, both through social media and through telephone calls, checking in on each other and supporting each other through this time, finding out if there are things that people need that we can assist with. What I want to say now is just a little bit about anxiety and calm. As I said, I know it's a difficult time for many of us. And I know that our faith, our ultimate trust in God, that God has the world in God's hands, is strong and good and true. And I also know that it is human and holy to be afraid. That's part of what I'm preaching about this Sunday, holy fear. So it's really important right now that we can acknowledge how we're feeling and that we can then find ways to support each other and work through that. Thanks to Sarah, I'm part of an online Facebook group of faith leaders of various religions who are supporting each other through this and exchanging best practices and tips for how we help our congregations manage this situation as well. A rabbi named Emily Cohen posted something this morning about a cure for coronavirus anxiety. I'm going to paraphrase her, but I just wanted to go through her steps, trusting that they will be of help to at least some of you. The first thing Rabbi Cohen recommends is that we keep at least something normal. While it's obvious much of our routine is going to be changed, do one thing every day that you normally do. That's just a way of grounding ourselves in our everyday life. The second is connect or reconnect. So stay connected to people. Use the telephone. Get on social media. Reach out to people that maybe you haven't checked in with for a while. This is a really good time to reestablish some of those connections that we can forget in the hustle and bustle of our daily lives. As we are doing at St. Peter's, we are gathering virtually, and that's something I encourage you to do as well, using Zoom or FaceTime or another social media that allows you to connect with people, even if they're just next door, but certainly people in other parts of the country. Having just said that, though, it's also important that we take time away from social media, away from media in general. There's an awful lot of fear and a lot of misinformation, as well as good information. But if we spend all day glued to it, waiting to see what the next thing to happen is, then that just heightens our anxiety. So while I do encourage you to stay connected and stay informed, don't sit on social media all day. That's just a recipe to increase your anxiety. Even in the midst of difficult times like this, there is always something that we can find, something we can look at, something we can hear that reminds us that God is in fact still present and that there are good and beautiful things in the world. So I ask you to remember that God is present in and through all of life, whether that's looking through the window and seeing a beautiful blue sky to remind us of the splendor of God's creation. Or if it's something like drinking a glass of water and remembering that water is the source of life and that is also from God. So I encourage you to remember that there are awesome things going on, to remember that there are people who are helping, and to remember that COVID-19 is not everything that's going on in the world right now. There are other things that also we can pray for and pay attention to. Because we are people of stories, Rabbi Cohen writes, think about the story you'll tell. So all of us, we are people of the story. Our Bible is essentially a set of stories about human interaction with God, and we all frame our lives around various stories. So find a way to tell your story, whether that's journaling, drawing something, creating something. Just tell the story of this moment, write it down, or create something artistic, including your feelings, your anxiety, your anger, grief, your uncertainty about all of this. Remember that you're a storyteller because, as Rabbi Cohen says, someone is going to ask you what this time was like. And finally, last, is breathe. I know that sounds obvious, but when we get tense and stressed and anxious, our first instinct is to hold our breath, and that just spirals through the rest of our body and makes us more anxious. So remember to breathe in deeply. Breathe in the air, breathe in the love of God, and then relax, exhale. So I encourage you to practice these things, and again, to know that we are indeed all in this together, that Sarah and I are available to you. I ask you to hold in your prayers, particularly those among us who are ill or vulnerable, to pray especially for healthcare workers, others who are on the front lines. And I ask you to remember that in God, we are all held in love. I'll be in touch again soon. In the meantime, be well.